Who are you? Since we were able to talk, we have all been taught to respond to that question. My name is Sarah. I work as an engineer. I'm a dad. I attend school. This is who I am. That's me. Like name tags, we display our identities as though they could adequately convey the great mystery of who we are. Here's the reality, though. Those labels are all outfits. Maybe lovely ones, but costumes all the same. Furthermore, the more we cling to them, the more we lose sight of the fact that we are really something far bigger, more liberated, and less measurable than any identity could ever be. Society gives us scripts from birth. They give you a name. They assign you a gender. You are informed of the family you are a part of, the culture you represent, and the religion you may practice. The script grows as you go. Your relationship status, professional path, and academic standing. It turns into what you think is a biography of yourself. However, you are not any of these things. What you're doing is them. These are the parts you perform in life's vast theater. Additionally, you can alter roles like any skilled actor. However, we forget we're acting at all, which is the issue. Why do we hold onto these positions so tightly? Because they provide us with a feeling of security. I know where I belong in the world if I'm someone. It feels secure. Here's the conundrum, though. You limit yourself more the more you define yourself. You create barriers around your own potential the instant you say, I am this, you're simultaneously saying, I am not that. To make matters worse, you begin to defend this persona as though it were your real existence. Because it jeopardizes your narrative, you are afraid of change. You're afraid of failing since it might change your personality in ways you don't like. This is why it is so frightening to let go of one's identity. It's similar to entering a vacuum. What am I if not my occupation, my nationality, or my beliefs? We worry that nothing will remain if we remove the mask. However, what if that nothing is actually openness rather than emptiness? What if the true you is hiding beneath the mask? Not a solid, stable object, but a constantly evolving, flowing consciousness that defies easy categorization. Being useless does not equate to being nobody. It entails having freedom. Free to switch between roles without worrying about losing who you are. Consider the happiest moments in your life. Was it during your meticulous image management? Or was it when you were so engrossed in laughter, love, music, or invention that you completely forgot yourself? You weren't someone attempting to keep up an identity during those times. You were only alive. The beauty of being nobody is that you become like water when you let go of your self-image, able to take on any shape and face every moment without the burden of your ideal self. And yet, this is when life becomes the richest. Since you're not occupied with defending your narrative, you're experiencing it. When we let go of who we are, amazing things happen. The opinions of others no longer influence us. Praise doesn't make you feel better, and criticism doesn't break you if you're not trying to maintain a certain image. You're no longer a puppet controlled by outside approval. Of course, this isn't necessarily how society feels. One cannot easily govern someone who is difficult to categorize. You can't be confined, sold a picture, or forced to fit in when you're nobody. This explains why ego death is discussed in so many spiritual traditions. The goal is to free yourself from the prison of identification, not to lose your sense of self. To be nobody is to be everything, the Zen masters once said. That seems like foolishness at first, but consider it. You become open to being anything when you let go of the idea that you are this. You may truly inhabit the life of a parent, friend, stranger, lover, or nomad when you let go of your set identity. You won't feel like you're betraying a static version of yourself. It's similar to being an actor who can play any part since they aren't tricked into believing they are the part. Knowing that you can alter the script at any time gives you freedom. So, how can we start to let go of our identity? Take note of how frequently you say or believe I am, then fill in the rest. I'm nervous. I'm a shy person. I succeed. I'm a failure. You're locking yourself into a frame each time you do this. Consider these phases to be transitory instead. It's not that you're feeling nervous. You're not a successful person forever. You're just experiencing success. You're in motion in every way. And the more you think about that, the more you see that you've always been flexible. Eliminating your identification does not imply that you are a new person with no past. It simply implies that you no longer mistake the area for the map. Your life narrative is a stunning roadmap. It displays your location and actions. That being said, it is not the same as your current, living reality. And the only place you truly exist is at that very time. You may approach this situation in a new way without bringing yesterday's script into it when you're not mired in the narrative of who I am. The beauty lies there. The freedom resides there. The thing is this: you will still be defined by others. They will continue to claim that you are the same person you have always been. However, you can smile knowing that their statements are merely snapshots and not infallible facts. You stop circling around attempting to live up to expectations when you stop becoming someone the way the world expects you to be. Instead of living from the outside in, you begin to live from the inside out. And you may discover the most freeing truth of all in that area. The role was never you. The actor was you. The actor is also at liberty. Imagine observing the waves while standing on a beach. After rising and taking shape, each wave falls back into the ocean. It's the same with your identity. It rises in a split second. This is who I am. That is who I am. However, whether you want it to or not, it disappears after that. The issue is that most of us attempt to stop the wave by holding on to it. We will always believe this to be me. The ocean, however, has different ideas. Everything shifts. Roles change. Even the things that used to define you might go in an instant, causing you to question your identity. Clinging to identity can be unpleasant because of this. Losing your job can feel like death if your identity is tied to your work. A breakup might leave you completely broken if it's connected to a relationship. Aging might feel like a personal betrayal if it's predicated on youth and beauty. However, these transitions don't ruin you once you stop being so strongly associated with any one role. You view them as waves, nothing more. You are the ocean, and they come and go, large, open, and undisturbed. When one wave goes away, the ocean doesn't freak out. It anticipates more. Alan Watts frequently said this. It's not necessary for you to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. Consider that. You don't need to bring up the past today. You don't need to bear the burden of all the outdated versions of yourself. But we hold on. The outdated garments that no longer fit us are kept. Even when our mental homes are crumbling, we continue to live there. Why? Because it feels dangerous to venture into the unknown. Who am I if I'm not my former self? The doorway is that. That is an invitation to learn more. Life becomes more fun when you stop trying to be someone you're not. Identity becomes less like armor you have to wear to survive, and more like a collection of costumes you may wear for pleasure. You could be the teacher one day, the student the next, and the idiot the one after that. And that's all right. You no longer have to prevail in the contest to see who is more significant, prosperous, or well-liked. Because you're free from the draining competition if you're not striving to be someone. Without relying on the global scoreboard to inform you of your progress, you can just be. Contrary to popular belief, this is not detachment in the icy, heartless sense. In fact, you're more receptive to intimacy, connection, and love when you're not ensnared in protecting a self-image. Why? What does this say about me, since you're not always sifting through everything? Without putting yourself or others in a box, you may be with them, listen to them intently, and meet them where they are. Ironically, you become incredibly distinctive once you give up striving to be unusual. It's because you're allowing your true self to shine through, not because you're creating it. Think about kids. They are free to switch between roles before the burden of identification is imposed on them. In a single afternoon, a child can become a scientist, a cook, a dancer, or a pirate. If it aligns with their personal brand, they don't care. All they do is play. When you let go of becoming someone, you regain that spirit. You recall that life itself is a form of play, not in a trivial way, but rather in the sense that it is dynamic, imaginative, and ever-evolving. With this perspective, you can welcome life's changes with interest instead of fear. Disclosing our identities also highlights our interdependence. You live in a state of perpetual separation when you're holding on to me and mine, me against them, my side against theirs. But those walls start to come down when you're no one in the sense of your ego. The gradual realization that you are a part of life begins to dawn on you. Life is you. Every pair of eyes is viewed by the same consciousness that sees through yours. Every wave is created by the same ocean that creates yours. And all of a sudden, the thought of competing with others seems as ridiculous as a wave attempting to eclipse another. This does not imply that you must give up all of your choices or preferences. Being nobody does not imply that you have no goals or principles. It indicates that you handle them softly. You don't have to base your entire identity on choosing one road over another. You become more flexible when you do this, because you're not clinging to the steering wheel in fear of losing your identity. You may change direction when life takes a different turn. And oddly enough, because you're not as preoccupied with fighting reality, this flexibility frequently helps you get closer to the life you really desire. So, how do you live this out in a society that demands you to be someone all the time? You begin modestly. Take note of the times you feel the need to defend yourself, to explain your decisions, or to ensure that others perceive you in a particular manner. Hold on. What am I currently protecting, you ask? Is it my image or my real life? Try letting it go after that. Allow someone to disagree with you without correcting them. Let a little critique go unanswered without defending yourself. It might not be as deadly as you thought. You will eventually realize that being nobody does not mean destroying oneself. It's about removing the barriers that prevent you from living life to the fullest. And perhaps, just perhaps, you'll come to understand that being recognized, respected, or admired isn't the source of the greatest happiness. It results from being able to accept whatever life has to offer at the time and living in the present with open hands. Because you can finally experience the one thing that really counts when you're not holding on to who you are. Life itself, not your narrative or your image. This is an effective technique. Try to describe yourself whenever you introduce yourself without bringing up your position, accomplishments, or duties. Simply discuss what you enjoy, what thrills you, and what you've noticed recently. At first, it feels weird, nearly nude. Without titles and labels, we feel vulnerable since we're so accustomed to hiding behind them. However, that's precisely the point. You begin to realize that your actions and who you are not the same. Additionally, meeting people without performing for their approval becomes simpler the more you practice. A lot of Western culture is based on the idea that you can become a better version of yourself by improving yourself. Although growth is perfectly acceptable, this ongoing pressure might subtly manifest as self-rejection. It mutters, "You're not enough yet. You have to earn your worth." However, you've created a prison the instant you equate your value with a picture. When you're chasing a changing objective, every improvement feels fleeting. You let go of this tiresome race when you let go of being someone. You continue to grow. You simply quit developing in order to prove yourself. Alan Watts used to say that life is like music. Reaching the song's conclusion is not the purpose of music. The purpose is to enjoy playing it. Identity fixation, if life were a piece of music, would be like racing to the last note so you can claim to have performed it. You may dance with life instead of rushing through it once you stop being someone. You stop caring about how the song makes you look, so every note becomes pleasurable. There's no finish line in sight. You're just in it, feeling the rhythm. People will misinterpret you, of course. Being nobody can be dangerous to others in a society that is fixated on self-definition. They may claim that you're avoiding responsibility or that you don't take life seriously. In actuality, however, because you're confronting life head-on without the ego's distortions, you're taking it more seriously than ever. Your reputation, Instagram bio, and resume don't conceal anything. You're living it right here. Ironically, since you're not always attempting to maintain a background image, this frequently makes you more dependable and present for other people. How do you strike a balance between this and the real world, where titles and labels are still expected? Consider identity to be a tool rather than a reality. When necessary, you can assume the professional costume. When not, you can remove it. You don't have to confuse the role with your own self. In this manner, you might be a part of society without being a part of it. You don't have to think that being a doctor, an artist, a mom, or an engineer is the entirety of who you are. Being nobody has the advantage of preserving your individuality. It makes it clear. Your innate eccentricities, interests, and skills come to the fore naturally when you're not forced to play a certain role. People like me don't do that. It makes you more unexpected in the greatest manner, considering that you might attempt things you never would have, go down previously unexplored avenues, or make connections with people you might have otherwise written off. Failure also doesn't hurt as much because you're not defending a strict image. It simply blends into the dancing. This lifestyle has a deep sense of humility. Being the sharpest person in the room is no longer necessary. The last word is no longer necessary for you. You no longer have to win every debate or establish your value in every encounter. You're not diminished by your humility. It gives you more room. Without the constant friction of ego protection, it makes space for new ideas, progress, and other people's truths. You learn that the joy of life isn't found in controlling it in that openness. It's in giving it your all without having to be exceptional. Consider it this way. Identity is comparable to a mask. Although masks can be beneficial and attractive, they become oppressive if they are adhered to the face. Learning to remove the mask when you need oxygen is part of being nobody. When you do, you come to a startling realization. You can exhale more easily. It feels easier to talk. Making decisions feels more liberated. Because you're no longer entangling difficulties with your identity, even difficulties seem less personal. Life can reveal your true self more fully if you let go of your preconceived notions about yourself. This change takes time to occur. The unlearning process is gradual. When the old need to be someone comes back, you'll notice it. Perhaps on social media, at work, or in a social situation. Just take note of it rather than passing judgment on yourself. As you greet an old friend, smile at it. Say something like, there's that little actor in me again, wanting to take the stage. As an alternative to being ensnared in the performance, you can choose to observe the play from the audience. This eventually becomes instinctive. Even if you continue to play parts, you remain true to yourself. Even though you are aware that they are only stories, you continue to tell them about yourself. And something lovely occurs in that freedom. Life gets deeper but lighter. You don't have to worry about happiness fading. You can also feel sadness without thinking it defines who you are, because you're not a fixed person struggling to stay alive anymore. Once you see through the facade of being someone, you begin to realize how much of your life was spent defending that facade. If you're the wide open space where all the somebodies come and go, it all starts to seem pointless. The disagreements you had, the restless nights spent worrying about what other people thought, the effort you put into looking a certain way. You come to the realization that the image you were defending was a fabrication. It was a mental projection of others, continually changing based on their personal biases, opinions, and emotions. Trying to exert control over something you could never really control was so draining. It's like putting down a bulky rucksack you forgot you were carrying when you let it go. This is where the magic lies. You become easier to adore when you give up attempting to be someone you're not. You're open, not because you're trying to win someone's love. When they don't have to be cautious around you, people can sense it. When you can feel safe without them having to stroke your ego. In relationships, sharing your experience becomes more important than showing your value. Love is more open. It's not because you become flawless, but rather because you've given up on being flawless. Ironically, you become profoundly unique in a way that doesn't require acknowledgement when you let go of your uniqueness. Alan Watts frequently discussed the ridiculousness of taking ourselves too seriously. According to him, life is a cosmic game of pretending to be all these different people in order to hide from oneself. You can find the humor in it when you're nobody. You don't have to feel inferior when you laugh at your own errors. There's no shame in admitting you don't know, because you realize that your anxieties are a part of a larger performance. You may even face them with a certain lightness. And there's wisdom in that laughing. We realize that we were never intended to cling so tightly. This does not exclude you from occasionally becoming enmeshed in identity issues once more. You will. The ego is a cunning performer who is constantly prepared to return to the stage. However, you will have the option to move away each time you become aware of it. You'll keep in mind that the wonderful thing about being nobody is that you can be anybody at any time. You have the freedom to act rather than react, to play rather than defend, to live rather than perform. The globe starts to resemble a playground rather than a war. And that change completely alters the way you spend your days. Consider the times in your life when you were at your most alive, totally focused on what you were doing and not caring about your appearance or if you were doing it correctly. Those are moments of freedom and individuality. In those cases, no one was performing. You were just there. Making those times more frequent is actually the practice of being nobody. By eliminating the barriers, most notably the ongoing requirement to control your image, rather than by coercing them. When you take off your disguise, life has always been waiting for you. And this is possibly the most freeing aspect. You stop comparing yourself to other people when you let go of your identity. Jealousy and anger are unnecessary without the scoreboard showing who is ahead or behind. You don't view other people's achievements as challenges to your value. Rather, you regard them as lovely manifestations of life. Instead of viewing their shortcomings as evidence of your superiority, you see them as a part of the same dance that you are in. When you stop trying to be someone you're not, comparison becomes useless. All you're doing here is contributing to the universe's development. The response to the question, "But if I'm nobody, won't I lose motivation?" is no. Curiosity and love may take the place of the anxiety that formerly motivated you. Instead of doing things to improve your appearance, you start doing them because they make you feel alive. You work for the thrill of producing, not for praise. Helping others feels natural to you, even if you don't do it for attention. Motivating others is not dying. It is the beginning of genuine motivation. It is not necessary to vanish from existence in order to be nobody. It entails not wearing the armor. The focus has shifted from how I appear to what this moment demands of me. You still have passions, dreams, and preferences, but you don't give them any thought. You continue to create goals, but you don't give up if they don't materialize. You're more adaptable, more receptive, and more open to life surprises. Perhaps most significantly, you may now feel good about yourself without waiting for approval from others. Ultimately, the beauty of being nobody is that it brings you back to the reality you had before you learned to play a part. You just arrived. To be deserving of love or acceptance, you didn't have to show anything. You didn't live with a heavy veil of self-consciousness between you and life. Even while you can't return to your childhood, you can enter a state of consciousness where you play the game even though you know it's a game. You play because you like it, not because you have to win. Perhaps this is the invitation. Take a moment to remove the mask. See what happens if you stop introducing yourself by stating your roles, accomplishments, and occupation. Observe the results of allowing talks to be spontaneous rather than staged. Take note of how much easier life is when you're not burdened with maintaining an image. When you meet people for who they are rather than how you believe they should be, you'll notice how much deeper your friendships feel. The freedom to be everything, to be the sky instead of the clouds, the ocean instead of the waves, the vastness instead of the mask, is ultimately the freedom to be nobody.